Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna 'alan nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu 'alayhi wa sallimu taslima.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Last time we spoke in regards to the signs, the minor signs of the Day of Judgment. Inshallah, this week we'll go through some of the major signs which will occur, which will become really apparent and everyone will realize these are the major signs. There are two hadith that we'll go through today. The first one is narrated by Hazrat Anas radhiyallahu anhu. He narrates that one time the Prophet ﷺ has said to us that the final hour, meaning the Day of Judgment, will not come until time contracts, meaning time becomes quick, time becomes short. And he mentioned that a year will feel like a month, a year will become like a month, and a month will become like a week, and a week will become like a day like an hour, and an hour will become like igniting a piece of wood. This is how fast time will become. And we see today, week after week, time just becomes shorter. And today I was just surprised that it was a Thursday as well. Back when I was at school, I was surprised that it was a Thursday because time has been so quick. It's just run like this. It's been running. We find that, as the Prophet ﷺ said, an hour will be feeling like igniting a piece of wood. If we ignite wood, if we put wood on fire, it goes quite quickly. It turns to ashes quite quickly. The same way hours just go like this. 1 hour, you won't even realize it's gone. And in the next hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the Sahaba, they gathered together, and they were discussing with each other in regards to the Day of Judgment. And then the Prophet ﷺ suddenly came to them, he came out of nowhere, and he asked the companions, what are you discussing about? And the companions replied that we're discussing about the final hour, what will happen during the final hour. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the Day of Judgment will not come until you see 10 signs, 10 major signs. He says that he mentioned that the first major sign will be smoke. As in, smoke will come from various places in the road. And this smoke will cover the road as well. It will be quite thick smoke. And it will cover everything and we won't be able to see much. And the second sign that he mentions is the appearance of the Dajjal. And the Dajjal is described as a man who will come and he will have one eye, as in he will be blind in his left eye. Some narrations mention he will be blind in his right eye. And he will come before us and he will hold in his two hands and he'll say in his right hand is heaven. So in his right hand, he will mention that in his right hand is actually hell. And in his left hand will be paradise. What he will mention is paradise. And Dajjal will come and he will trick everybody and he'll explain to people, he will try to trick everybody and people will begin to follow him. People will think that he is God. He will come and he will perform magic tricks as well. He will bring people to life and bring people's mothers and fathers to life in front of them. He will say, look, this is your mother and father. I can bring people to life. And this is what Dajjal will say, and he will confuse people like this. And he will visit every single person. The third sign that the Prophet ﷺ mentions is the appearance of the beast. And this beast is like the she-camel which came to Hazrat Salih alayhi salam. He was a prophet, and this beast will come and he will mark the Muslims and he will differentiate between the Muslims and the Kuffar. So he will come to every person as well and he will light. The Muslims will become, their face will become brightened. And the face of the Kuffar will become darkened, they become diminished. Then the fourth major sign the Prophet ﷺ mentions, and this hadith is mentioned in Muslim Sharif as well, so it's a very authentic hadith. Prophet ﷺ mentions that the rising of the sun from the west. We see the sun rises from the east, and from the east it goes over to the west, and from the west it sets, and it comes back around again. And this is what we see on a daily basis. The sun rises from the east, sun sets in the west. But the Prophet ﷺ mentions that the time of the Day of Judgment will come there when we see the sun rise from the west side. And from when this happens, the doors of the gates of mercy will be closed. Meaning after this, nobody will be able to ask for forgiveness. Whatever sins you have committed, and if you've not sought forgiveness from them, you will not be able to seek forgiveness from them anymore. This is why ulama mentioned that it's important, it's paramount upon us that we should always be seeking forgiveness for whatever sins we've done, whether we know these sins or whether we don't. So we should always be seeking forgiveness. Then the fifth sign that the Prophet ﷺ mentions is the descent of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam was the prophet that came before the Prophet ﷺ, and he was risen, and some people believe that he was killed. But Hazrat Isa alayhi salam was not killed on the cross. Rather, this is Jesus. Jesus is regarded as Prophet Isa alayhi salam. Rather, he was not killed on the cross, but he was taken to the heavens, and he will be sent back down to the earth by the end times. Some people today reject the appearance of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, but this goes against this hadith where clear-cut mentions that the descent of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam will be one of the major signs of the Day of Judgment. And Hazrat Isa alayhi salam did not pass away on the cross. The sixth sign is Ya'juj and Ma'juj. These are two huge tribes which will come and will cover the entire world. And there's another hadith which mentions that these groups of people will be so big, they'll be so huge in number that they'll come by a river or a lake, and they'll have groups, they'll have regiments, and from the first regiment they'll drink from this lake, and then when it comes to the last regiment they'll find that they'll think that there wasn't even a lake here. That's how many of them there will be. The seventh sign is that there will be landslides, and these are the 7th, 8th and 9th signs, where there will be landslides in both the eastern region of the earth, and there will be one in the western region of the earth, and there will be a landslide in Arabia, and after which fire will come forth from Yemen. And this fire is one of the final signs of the Day of Judgment. And this fire will bring people towards the assembly on the Day of Judgment. So when we were to gather on the plains on the Day of Judgment for our questioning, this is around the area where we will gather. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned this. He mentions all these 10 signs. These 10 signs came from who? The Prophet ﷺ. He mentioned them to the Sahaba Ikram who were gathered together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not directly give this as Quran. This is not all of this was mentioned directly from the Quran. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam this knowledge of what will happen in the future. Without this hadith, we would not know what will happen during the end times. We would not know the signs of the Day of Judgment. We would not be able to tell whether the Day of Judgment is close or not. Again, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us that he has prophesied this, meaning this is from the ilm al-ghaib. This is from the knowledge of the unseen. Future is something that we cannot tell, we cannot see. We can only predict what is going on. And this is what people do today. They predict using graphs and different diagrams. But the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't use any graphs or diagrams. He came straight to the Sahaba and he said these 10 signs. He gave them, and we see from last week the signs which we've seen is, or just the hadith that we mentioned before, is that time is very short. Next week we'll be here and we'll think that it's just been like an hour. We'll feel like it's just been a day since last Thursday and this Thursday. And we'll end on here where the Prophet ﷺ, he's been granted knowledge of whatever Allah wants to grant him. Whatever Allah has granted him of. So any knowledge of the future, the past and the present he's been granted of. Whatever we're doing right now, Allah has granted him this knowledge. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ.
MashaAllah.